I was grilling a really thick steak and the person watching me wondered what in the world I was doing, and it was just the reverse sear method. So I'm going to do a head-to-head comparison between the reverse sear and the traditional way of grilling a steak to see if there's any differences. I've got two really good looking New York strip steaks and they're about 1.5 inches thick, which is exactly what you need if you're doing the reverse sear method. That's where you take some steaks and you cook them over low and slow temperatures around 250 degrees so they warm up slowly, and then you do the final sear right before you take them off. And one important warning, the reverse sear method only works with steaks that are at least 1.5 inches thick. If they're any thinner than that, you're probably going to end up overcooking them. And these are both going on some gas grills purely for convenience sake, because it's a lot easier to have two different grills cooking at two different temperatures if they're gas grills. I could have done the experiment with charcoal grills instead, and I would have gotten similar results, with one main exception, and that is the flavor, of course, is way better on charcoal. To set up the gas grill for the reverse sear, I'm going to take the two outside burners and set them to low with the two inside burners turned completely off. That'll allow me to do some indirect cooking, and I'm aiming for a temperature around 250 degrees Fahrenheit. If it goes up to 300, that's okay, but you probably don't want to go much higher than that. I'm going to put the steak directly on the warming rack that is above the two burners that are turned off, and that's going to keep it away from the heat to help things cook just a little bit more even. You also want to flip it over every 10 minutes or so that way it cooks evenly from both sides and you don't end up with one side that's cooked well and the other one that's mostly rare. And for a steak this size, it's probably going to take 30 or 40 minutes before it reaches 110 degrees Fahrenheit, at which point I take it off and let it rest for a little while I crank up the burners on high for the final sear. And that rest is going to allow the steak temperatures to drop just a little bit, but more importantly, it's going to make the temperatures even throughout it, so that way we get a nice even cook all the way across that steak. For the other steak, I am going directly for the sear, so I turn all of the burners on high, absolutely as high as they go, and it was good and ripping hot. I'm gonna put the steak directly on the grill grates. Then I'm gonna flip the steak every minute or so until it gets the sear that I like, and when it does, I'm gonna put it on the warming rack, turn all of the burners down to low. I won't take the steak off until it reaches 125 degrees internal. You'll notice that I'm using temperatures a lot, and that is the most reliable method for determining how done a steak is. A lot of people suggest going based on feel with different methods, including the ones in different parts of your hand, but steaks all behave differently, and you may end up with a wide range of temperatures and doneness if you use that method. That's why I suggest people get a good thermometer, and their steak will be a lot better for it. Okay, so these steaks have been resting for about 10 minutes or so. Let's go ahead and cut into them. We'll let these sit for just a minute so that way the color can come back into the steaks. If you've ever cut into one fresh out of the rest, oftentimes it looks a little bit overcooked. There are a couple of disadvantages for cooking it each way. If you're going to do the reverse sear, it's going to take a lot longer, and you may accidentally push all the way through the temperature that you're going for. This one was actually about 5 degrees over my desired temperature because of that. When you cook really hot, then it moves the temperature quickly, and sometimes that carryover can make it so that way it's overdone. If I contrast that with the sear first method, it's really easy to hit your temperature because you've done all the hard work at the beginning. A lot of that carryover is pushed through, and then the temperatures drop down. Temperature starts rising just a little bit slower, and that way you're able to pull it off at just the right moment. But what we want to really see is how they look on the inside. And one thing that you may notice if you're cooking with the sear first method is you could end up with a larger or thicker well done bumper, and that's that brown ring that goes around the stuff on the inside that you really want. Ideally, you'd have a nice sear on the outside with edge to edge medium rare or medium depending on the temperature preferences. And I've even heard some people say that that looks more like a bullseye because it can go from well done, medium, medium rare, and possibly even raw if you're cooking your steak at too high of a grilling temperature. That's another reason for using a good thermometer, is you can make sure that the center is cooked the way that you want. But doing the reverse sear method allows you to get a more even color all the way through. But let's go ahead and taste these and see how they turned out. So here's the verdict. If you sear first, you're absolutely going to be able to guarantee that you get an amazing crispy crust on the outside. Whereas the reverse sear takes a little bit of practice to make sure that you nail your temperatures. You may have to pull it off if you're going to overshoot before you get that amazing crust. But you are rewarded for the extra time that you spent on the reverse sear steak with a lot more tenderness. That's a big reason why people do sous vide, is because it makes a steak a lot more tender with each bite. But if you want to check out my ultimate guide to grilling steak on a charcoal grill and maximize that flavor, I've got that video for you right over here.